We're back again for another Zoomcast. Joined by Brian Neubert and Tom Dienhart. I'm Alan Karpick with goldenblack.com. We are brought to you also. This is kind of an early Saturday simulcast brought to you by the Union Club Hotel, 811 Bistro, and the good folks that put that together. Brian will be doing Saturday simulcast coverage this weekend also. Obviously, the Boilermakers take on men's basketball, take on Davidson on Saturday evening.
That's news to me.
Yeah, it is. That's when you need to be. That's when they're going to throw it up at 6:15. I think is start time at Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. So, Tom, I want to start with you, and obviously you got to ask the first question and talked about. I guess you did, though. Somebody kind of interrupted the whole thing, but just your early impressions on Ryan Walters and his not only his meet and greet or kind of introductory part, but also the press conference part today. We got a chance to put our eyes and ears on him for the first time.
Yeah, boy, he seems like an impressive young man. And fellas, he's younger than all three of us. Noobs, you're now older than the Purdue football head coach. But
by a long shot.
I covered a lot of these dudes in recruiting, and that's what makes me feel like I'm older than the Constitution.
Yeah.
No, he seems like a good person, said all the right things, obviously. Asked him about what the offense is going to look like. Of course, he's well aware of Purdue's history and tradition of being the cradle of quarterbacks. Wants to do something that causes problems for defenses. He should know all about that, obviously. Talked about NIL, and he seemed pleased with what Purdue's collective/NIL situation was. He's contacted recruits, right? And he's trying to keep the current roster pieced together as well. So he's got a lot on his plate, guys, and he's a one-man act right now. No hires were imminent from what I could tell. So he's on the road. I'm sure maybe he's left already to start talking to kids in this 2023 recruiting class. So dawn of a new era, and it definitely is a very exciting era that's going to look, sound, and feel a lot different than I think what we just had the last 6 years.
Yeah, Brian, your thoughts? I mean, he certainly did leave that impression of he's not a loud voice type guy, kind of soft spoken, but I thought he articulated his message pretty clearly today. Your impressions as well?
Yeah, no, he's got a certain magnetism about him, and I figured that was the case because he obviously was the guy who rose to the top of Purdue's board during the interview process. I just think he's got a certain personality about him. He's got a certain confidence about him that I think probably rubs off on the people around him. And I think it's the sort of thing that players and coworkers probably respond to about him. I thought it was kind of the moment of the press conference when he announced to everyone that he's the best defensive coordinator in the country.
I like that.
Good for him. Great. That was that speaks to self-assuredness. That speaks to confidence. That speaks to a lot of things that can be transitive things. They can rub off on players. They can rub off on fellow staff members. They can rub off around the whole program. Mm-hmm. They can build a mentality, sort of since there's probably a bunch of prop bets on how long it would take someone to use the word culture.
Yeah.
I just think he's got a certain presence about him that, it is almost assuredly the reason that Purdue, kind of fell in love with this guy.
From accounts, he blew away Mike Babinski, and it sounds like maybe Mike Berghoff too in the interview process. And I agree with Brian. I like that because that's today's world. I mean, I use this, and I'm the oldest of the three of us, that my day this is a new day because it's a new way of coaching football. Not everybody does it this way, but you got a 36-year-old guy. Heck, he was born the year I was married, if that brings you any context to the whole thing. But also that when you make a statement like that, it didn't come off as he's bragging. It's kind of like, I got a little bit of a bravado to me. I've got not a shtick, but a confidence to him. And I think that it seems to me, and I understand the Devin Mockabee video last night was made for TV, so to speak, or made for Twitter. I get all that, but he does seem to have a presence to him that, and a confidence that I think he'll need, because he's going to have a challenge at Purdue without question, but he seems to be looking right at that and saying, that's a good thing.
Yeah. If you don't have it, you can't give it away, as they say, right? And he's got the confidence, and you better believe in yourself, right? We all should believe in ourselves, because obviously that'll make us better at whatever we're doing. And certainly last year, guys, his defense was off the charts, right? That was a national story. Illinois football was a national story last year, and it was because of the defense, right? It wasn't because of the offense or Tommy DeVito. Chase Brown got some accolades, but it was that defense, And Ryan Walters was the guy that pushed the buttons, and of course was named on threes, I think, National Defensive Coordinator of the Year, I think, this last week. And all fall along, and whenever you watched Illinois, the commentators would gush about how Ryan Walters was going to be a head coach one day, and here we are, right? And Brett Bielema told me that he thought it was going to happen last year. So it seemed to be a matter of not if, but when this was going to occur. Purdue got this guy still on the ascent, and it's going to be fascinating, guys, really fascinating to see what this staff looks like. That's really what I'm eager to see, is how this thing comes together and what it looks like, because you guys have watched football as long as me and know that, well, you're only as good as the people around you. I'm sure Ryan Walters understands that. So again, the staff construction is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I liked it too, Brian. I thought the second moment of the press conference was actually not in the press conference. It was his intro when he looks at the camera, I think, starts his thing by saying, I'm here. Or I can't remember what the wording he used.
This is real life, right?
Yeah, this is real life. And it's like, I just went from making, and it's not about the money necessarily, but he's well paid at Illinois, but he's up to maybe quadrupled his salary. And I thought that was impressive as well. We do know some details, or have gleaned some details about the contract, which is kind of interesting. Sounds like it's going to be around, as Tom reported this morning on the site and our message board, sounds like it's going to be in the $4 million range, and a significant increase in the pool for assistants. Brian, to speak to that, the importance of that, obviously, as assistant pool, and as it pertains to that, but also secondary in terms of recruiting and being able to reach out in the transfer portal, just having the right kind of characters who can help you do that.
Yeah, I think the assistant coaching salary pool kind of speaks for itself. You want good people around you. That doesn't mean you go out and hire somebody who was a defensive coordinator at Florida State 20 years ago. It means you go hire up and comers like yourself, Ryan Walters, but then you also have the resources to retain them and keep some continuity on your staff. It doesn't mean you're paying for a resume. It means you're paying for the right people, and you're paying to keep the right people for long enough to where they're here to make enough of an impression and to build a strong enough foundation at this program for it to matter before they go on to become head coaches or high-end coordinators or something like that. It's a matter of retention as much as it is, just going out there and buying a bunch of resumes to say, oh, look where this guy worked before. He's a big-time hire. It's kind of the gulf we've been talking about here the last 24 hours between the big name and the best fit and the most appropriate, person to build a program. But obviously that's a huge thing nowadays. It should have been a huge thing all along, is how much you're investing in the people other than the head coach. Because the head coach is the figurehead. He sets the philosophy, he sets the whole tone for the program. But it's the assistant coaches and it's the support staff, it's the recruiting staff that handle so much of the day-to-day stuff. If those aren't good people, then you have problems. And that's, I think what you've seen under the Brahms here the last couple of years, and it worked for them. But you saw assistant coaches coming and going. You saw this centralized power structure of Brahm men, and everything else around them was kind of like window dressing. It felt like at times. It worked for them. So I'm not saying that as any sort of criticism. But that's atypical. That's not how it works at a lot of places. You got to have good assistant coaches. You got to have good support staff people. And now more than ever, you got to have a good, strong recruiting operation. And I think Purdue investing in the grassroots part of its program even more than it did before is a big deal. That being said, the Brahms had, was it 4 million?
They had 4 in their pool, supposedly. Didn't use it all.
They didn't use it all.
And this guy's got 5.5.
Part of that pool went to, Greg's job too. And that's not an assistant coaching position per se.
And that is that's a big hole now, right?
That is a big hole. Yes. So now I don't know if Purdue's new 5.5 to 6, whatever it was you guys reported earlier today, Tom reported, I don't know if that's going to include whoever their operations guy is or not, but
and I don't know.
Say Purdue had 4 before. That doesn't mean Purdue was spending $4 million a year on its 10 assistant coaches.
Yeah, and it wasn't as we understand it. So yeah, I think that's a interesting part of that. And it's certainly going to give him some room to maneuver. Just overall, Tom and Brian, I'll circle back with one more question on recruiting. But Tom, I want just overall personality again. He kind of comes off, as I said, a quiet confidence with him, and yet it's pretty obvious that you can see that he's going to connect well. And it's going to be a very different vibe. And again, as I will repeat what Brian said, this is not a criticism of Jeff Brom and his staff. It's just going to be really different, I think. And maybe you have to give Mike Babinski and Mike Berghoff credit that they chose maybe because they had to. We don't know the whole process and how they got to. I think it's clear that Walters was on their list all along. How the search took its meandered and got to him, we don't know for sure. We do know it was the day before, but it does give you the feeling that this is a new and maybe a little bit of innovative way to going about running Purdue football over the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, like you said, it's going to be have a different personality vibe, and from the top, obviously, a guy with a defensive background. And real quick, I asked Ryan Walters if he was going to call his own defense.
Yeah.
Or if he was going to be a head coach, because I had a lot of people tell me that, under Brom, it was very much a divisive team. It was offense and defense. And Jeff really wasn't that super involved with the defense. They didn't always feel like they were connected. I don't want to get up on a tangent, but I think that's important for a head coach to be a head coach. But you got to do what you're comfortable, right? And his answer today, Ryan Walters, was, well, he could still be the guy calling his defense. It's going to depend on who he gets on his staff and if he feels comfortable. It sounded like to me that was the case, so that he could hand it off or he could keep doing it depending on who these somebodies are that are on his staff. And from Brian, it sounds like Chuck Amato need not send a resume, right?
Yeah.
No, he's not. It sounded to me like
that was a bad attempt at a humor, but
Chuck Amato and the sunglasses.
But anyway, old Florida State defensive coordinator. Anyway,
and NC
Tony
State
Bennett. Looked like Tony Bennett.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Before he started hanging out with the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. And like I said, he's got a lot on his plate here. Keeping the roster together right now. I got the sense from kind of communicating with some people connected to the program that things went well at that players only meeting yesterday. I think the kids are going to love this guy, right? So that's step number one. Now, step number two, can he get him to play hard and buy in and do what he wants? And it seems like things are off to a good start there. I got to think, guys, he's going to connect with recruits. Brian can talk to that, but I got to think he's going to be magic in the living room. Beelum had talked about, he called him an ambidextrous recruiter, a guy who could really fit in any environment. And so again, kudos to Bobinski. I don't think any of us last week thought this was going to be the landing point.
Even 24 hours ago.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's exciting. And why not take a swing and see if maybe Purdue caught something special here. I don't want to go on too long here, but I mentioned last week in something I wrote, it seems like there has been a trend in college and the NFL to hire sort of still up and coming guys to be your head coach. We see plenty of examples in the NFL, plenty of examples in college football as well. And now Purdue's turned into the stone. Quite a contrast to what happened at Nebraska and Wisconsin with Matt Rule and Luke Fickell. Purdue did a total 180 here, hiring a guy who's never sat in the big chair before.
Yeah. It is going to be interesting on that standpoint. It'll be fun from our perspective of dealing with it. Brian, I wanted to ask you just about recruiting and just any feel you got from not only what Ryan Walters said, but also Mike Babinski from early feel. I mean, I think we generally agree that this is a guy that's going to resonate with high school kids and maybe transfer portal kids. But anything else that you glean from that standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, he's as far as I'm concerned, he's straight out of Central Casting to be a really impactful recruiter. I think that he's got the people skills, he's got the presence about him, he's got the confidence about him that, it sure seems to me like he's a guy who can really excel in that area. The thing now, though, is, you have to be good in the portal to have a chance nowadays to win at a really high level, because that's the name of the game now. As I said yesterday, this might be the perfect time to be hiring a guy with no head coaching experience, because the job is now entirely different. So this generation of coaches coming up now, they're the ones who are writing the playbook. They're not following, the previous generation's playbook. They're writing the new playbook, and that's where he's got to be really good. And that starts now. That started last night. Stuff like that. But no, he's got everything you want in a recruiter. He seems like a relatable guy. He seems like he's got good people skills. And that's what this all comes down to. Like, people overlook the simplest things sometimes as part of these searches. Who is the best around people? Who can bring the best out of people? Who can motivate people? Who do people respond to the best? Those are the people who are the best hires. And he sure seems like he checks all those boxes. That being said, he has to go do it now. It's easy,
no doubt,
to win the press conference. It's easy to be good in your first press conference. It's easy to lay your mandate. It's like what they say with bands. You've got your whole life to write your first album, but the next one that's due in 2 years is a little bit more challenging. This was his moment, and he was ready for it, and now he has to go out and do it.
He's a good-looking guy.
Yeah, he is. He's got a great presence to him, doesn't he?
He looks like he can still play.
Yeah, he does at that as well.
No, it's.
He said he can still spin it a little bit. That's what he said.
If I saw him at a game, and this wouldn't be the first time this would have happened, I would have thought he was a recruit, like a transfer on an official visit. Yeah, I mean, he's 36 years old, so I guess he is a young man. I mean,
yes, he is.
It's I don't know if that says more about his youth or our collective
ages.
Yeah.
Well, and I said before, and I'm repeating myself, but maybe not in this podcast, it ain't my time anymore. It still might be your times between Brian and Tom, but it ain't my time anymore.
No, it's not my time anymore.
It is their time. And I think that may be the number one thing here is somebody realized, maybe because of circumstance in the search, I don't know, but somebody realized, and I'll give Mike Babinski and a lot of credit that, we got to figure out ways to make it the kids' time, because NIL, transfer portal, it is a player's world even more than ever. And I think he's going to do well in that environment. So
let me relay a quick thing from my column yesterday too.
Yeah.
I was like 20 years old when, no, I was older than that. I was like 20 something years old when I first met Brad Stevens.
Yeah.
And came to know Brad a little bit. And, years later, I first met Micah Shrewsbury and I first met Marcus Freeman, guys like that. And you knew as soon as you met them, these guys are going places. Sometimes you just see it right away. And it sure seems to me like Purdue sat down with Ryan Walters. Was he the first name on the top of their list? Probably not. Does that matter at all? No, I mean, we all know you go into a process with an open mind, and sometimes the right guy finds you. And it sure seems to me like that's what happened here. Now, obviously, Ryan Walters has a long way to go to prove he was the right guy. Hasn't coached a game yet. Hasn't recruited a player yet. Hasn't really done anything yet, other than maybe not spilling food on himself at his first press conference. But yeah, I mean, sometimes greatness just kind of hits you in the face, and it sure seems to me like Purdue feels like that's what happened here with Ryan Walters.
All right, well said. All right, guys, thanks so much. I appreciate everybody's coverage. Tom, been busting, and Brian busting the hump to make this work, and interesting process that has now come to a level of conclusion. It's still going to be a lot of storylines to follow as Ryan Walters puts that staff together and what it all means. And look for Tom and Brian's work on that. And a reminder, too, if you haven't joined us yet, you certainly can. $1 US dollar. And that offer is less than 17 days from being over. So make sure that you join us if you are so interested in becoming a member of our goldenblack.com.
Unless you're a troll, then go.
And we don't want trolls, and we are going to use the word family. We'll say the goldenblack.com family, Knucklehead Central, whatever it takes. We'd like to have you on board. And if we don't talk to you before long, we also wish you a happy holidays. All right, guys, we'll be back. Like I said, we'll be back probably a week from Saturday for our Saturday simulcast. Brian will have lots of coverage from Purdue Davidson as well. Mr. Dienhart as well. Practice is going to be starting up too here before long. They are going to play a game here, and that would be 18 days from now. That's whole nother story. But we'll get to that later. All right. Have a great one, guys. Thanks for watching and listening. And thanks to Union Club Hotel for its support of our Saturday simulcast. Take care, all.